Hi, welcome once again to Off the Shelf Books on Tour. We have a well-known author with us today, Mr. Rob Buyea. Did I say that right?
Buyea, that's
Buyea,
right.
thank you. And the basis of your phenomenon and fame is Mr.
Mr. Terupt.
Terupt.
That's this one here.
So this was your first book because of Mr. Terupt.
Yes.
And now you've written 3?
There's 3 in the Mr. Terupt series, and I'm on to this new series now. That's right.
But it's the same people? Same personalities?
No, I have a cast of characters in the Mr. Terupt series. In the Mr. Terupt series, I have 7 students, a mix of boys and girls, who I juggle. They go back and forth telling you a 5th grade school story in this first one. And the 5th grade school year features a brand new teacher, this rookie guy named Mr. Terupt. And the kids take turns telling you about the good times, the bad times, the
How they
excitement,
perceive him as
the
a
mischief,
teacher.
the projects, all that happens in the course of that school year, ultimately leading up to a pretty big something. And as a result of that, the kids change and forever come together because of Mr. Terupt. So there's a cast of 7 kids in that one, where I'm told from multiple perspectives. And this one, I have a new cast of characters, 5 kids.
How old?
This one here is a 6th grade school story.
So your background as a teacher, as a coach, and as a dad, I found in reading your insight is unbelievable, and you'd almost have to be surrounded by children to be able to know that, there's a lot of people with or without children who think their kids' minds aren't that active and don't work that way, and they do. And to not acknowledge that, they're going to trip you up because they're smarter than you are.
Yeah, I'm chuckling because I'm thinking of my own kids. They would like to point that out
Right.
from time to time. That
Right.
They are smarter.
But I think that's why you're finding young people are responding to it. And listen, I love J.K. Rowling. She never insulted them. She would write a sentence that had 10 $50 words in it that I'd run for the dictionary. By the end of the sentence or the paragraph, she would have explained what the word meant, and they never had to go look it up. And I think that's why children were waiting at bookstores to buy her books, because she treated them in their brain as they deserve to be respected. And I find that you do that as well. Do you miss teaching? Do you miss the interaction?
Well, I certainly loved teaching, which I think is kind of certainly has a lot to do with why I'm busy writing school stories. It was something that I was passionate about, and I put a lot into it, tried a lot of things. It was a great experience for me. I'm fortunate now that as an author, I do manage to go and visit schools pretty regularly.
So you still get to rub elbows with them?
Yes, I'm in schools.
And you live through filing in the hall?
Yeah, so I get to interact with kids, my readers, a lot. I'm very fortunate and very grateful that that's the case. I'm able to say that. So, and that's the part I liked about teaching the most, was the kids. So I guess I'm still getting
Feedback?
enough of that.
Do you hear from students? Did they contact you about the books, about the stories?
You mean students that I had, or
Well,
readers?
it's just students that read.
Yes, I hear from readers.
How about the ones that
frequently.
you had and now you're famous, they're your best friend?
No, I don't know if that's the case, but I have received emails from some of those kids that I had as 3rd and 4th graders, and that's fun when that
They're about
happens.
ready to graduate now. Do you feel old?
Well, they're actually past that now, so
Ooh. And they'll be teaching their kids to read your books.
maybe.
Yeah.
I did get a picture from remember from Sean. He's now at a school, and he was holding up Mr. Terupt in his school library where he was working. So
Well, that's important that your readers sponsor a book. I remember one of my girls was maybe 10 or 12. She wanted Nancy Drew, and my local library didn't sponsor it. They didn't think, and this was way back in the early 70s. So she went to school, and she had an English assignment. that you had to do something. And she organized her class to write to the library and ask for Nancy Drew and the Hardy Boys. And she made a presentation. She appeared before the board. And when Nancy Drew and the Hardy Boys showed up at the library in our town, she was the first one to take it out. And I think, young people should know that you can ask your library to put these books in, especially if you really enjoyed it. Because if nobody tells them how good it is, they're not going to know. And then speaking to adults, would they know how much a student identified with your writing?
You're asking me if
No, I don't think they would. Us grown-ups. Would I, in my lifetime, read this book if I wasn't sitting here and it wasn't, my assignment for the week?
I'm guessing not. I mean, it's a middle grade school
I love
story,
it because I don't get to choose my books. They choose me. And no, I wouldn't read it, but I'm glad I did. I have a common ground with my grandchildren. I can hand them the book, and they're tickled to death to read it. I read all the Harry Potters, and I can walk in a room and pretend that I am Professor McGonagall, and that room shuts up quick. So it gives a grown-up an identity with, instead of just saying, sit down, shut up, and write. It works for me, and I wish other people knew that.
Well, I can say that I guess one of the things that has helped or has happened with my books is that they're school stories. They have some dynamic teachers. There's Mr. Terupt in this series, and in The Perfect Score, there's a couple teachers, Mrs. Woods and Mrs. Magenta, and they are characters that teachers identify with, teachers really like, and teachers certainly connect with the story. So there's a shared reading experience that is happening in schools and classrooms between the teacher and the kids.
Which was never in my day and age. You never knew they had a first name.
So
they definitely weren't married. Pregnancy was unheard of until the Korean War, and all the men were sent away, and we started seeing pregnant teachers show up. And they never wore pants. They never wore T-shirts. They were dressed like Sunday best every day. I rented to a teacher once, and we shared laundry. And I can remember her walking from her apartment to my home with a laundry bag. And I just burst out laughing because as far as I was concerned, my teachers never did laundry. They just, thought up ways to make my life miserable. But it's different, and this is very different than Nancy Drew and the Hardy Boys.
It is.
Yes,
it is.
Yes. But you teach them or you give them alternatives to getting things done that they may not have thought of. There was a little girl who was kidnapped in Florida in a Ford Fairlane, and she unscrewed the taillight, and that was the elongated, almost 8-inch tailgate, and she put her hand out, and the people behind her found a payphone. There were no cell phones, and they saved the little girl. And they asked her, how did she know to do that? She read it in Nancy Drew.
Wow.
So you incorporate alternatives to getting things done that these kids do together, that a solitary reader could learn that if he joined forces with others, they just might be able to accomplish something that's important to them. Thank you. It's not a skill that's taught to all of our children today. It's either this way or that way, and I think alternatives are almost as important and almost as long gone as common sense.
Well, there's certainly obstacles and challenges, different struggles that the characters...
More some today than when we were kids.
Yeah, for sure. So that stuff is definitely in my books.
And done well. Do your kids read your books?
Yes.
Do they critique you?
If I'm looking for that, if I give them something that I'm drafting, if that's what I want, yes.
But not if you don't want it.
I mean, Yeah, I guess not. It depends. So my oldest daughter, she's a freshman in high school now. She looks forward to taking the draft and reading through it and giving me some feedback. And
How long did it take you to write the first one?
the first Mr. Terupt novel took 6 years in order to before it became a reality.
Wow. What was longer, the writing or the getting it published?
You know what? It probably shook out to be about the same in the end.
Really?
I was teaching third grade in Connecticut when I started this first Mr. Terupt novel, and then in the midst of that, we moved. My family, we moved to Massachusetts, and I was at a boarding school, Northfield Mount Herman, which is in Western Mass. I went from teaching third grade to high school biology. So big move,
Yeah.
big life change, career change. I had children being born in the midst of all that. So it took a little bit longer. And with the first book, I had to shop it around and find somebody that said yes. And before the yes, there's rejections, and it's a long road. So that one was 6 years. But now I'm fortunate. I'm working as a full-time writer, and this one, and the next one, which is coming, this one will be hitting in October, The Perfect Secret. So there is a sequel on the way for this. These two books have taken about a year and a half. So that's
A year and a half together or a year and a half each?
each.
So do you think you'll get it down to one a year?
I'm working on book 3 right now, and it's not going any faster. I can tell you that.
Longhand or computer?
Both. Both. It depends where I am in the process. So
Okay.
I do a lot of revising on paper. I'll get the draft typed in, and then I like to print it out and sit down, and I just need to read it on paper, and I go to town, marking
See
it
if
up.
it works.
Making changes. Revision is by far most of the work.
Did you want to grow up to be a writer?
No way.
What do you want to be? Fireman?
No. When I was a kid in school, I was serious about school. I knew it was going to be important. I always worked hard and did well. But I liked school, but reading and writing was not anything I was crazy about as a kid. I did that stuff in school when I had to, and that was it. So ask me what my favorite book was as a kid. I didn't read one. I mean, that wasn't who I was. I was really mostly excited about sports, and so wrestling was my first passion. And so you asked me what I wanted to be. I wanted to be a New York State wrestling champion before I graduated high school. That was the sole focus. I knew that by the time I was in 7th grade.
Do you still?
I'm still involved in coaching, yes.
Oh, coaching,
So-
but you're not wrestling?
No, not. I mean, I wrestle with the kids when I go to practice, so still an important part of my
But
life.
again, if you're doing that, then you're still in the population. You're still hearing their ups and downs, their sads, their
it's,
sorries.
Yes. So in The Perfect Score, I have a character, RANDI, this girl who's a dynamic gymnast, and she's dealing with a lot of pressure, pressure to be the best. And 2 of my daughters happen to be involved in gymnastics, so I took kind of that piece of them and started building RANDI, her character, with that. But it was definitely my experiences as a wrestler, both when I was a kid competing and even more so when I started coaching. My experiences, things I saw with young kids, young athletes that were dealing with a lot of pressure, that would give their best, and when they lost and came off the mat, they weren't always greeted by hugs and pats on the back, but a lot worse. I'm often asked by the adults, if you look at the cover of my Mr. Terupt book, John Irving has blurbed it for me, which I'm super lucky and forever grateful for. But I'm asked, how did that happen? John and I met in the wrestling room at Northfield Mount Herman, because he's a huge wrestling guy, and he and I first struck up a friendship there, but we definitely see eye to eye on how wrestling and writing are very much the same. They go hand in hand. And for me, when I got done competing as a wrestler, because I competed all throughout college, and so when I got done, I was no longer training for these really lofty goals and competitions, and definitely felt a void in my life. And
Not a relaxation from the pressure, just an empty
this
space.
writing has taken that spot for me. It's the same. It's the same mental endurance and commitment that's required. Instead of getting up early to pound the pavement with the flashlight in hand, which I was doing in high school, running to be in the best shape I could be. Now it's up early and it's work at the.
So how do you fit that in, being a father, a daddy, and a coach? Do you write in the dark hours of the day and night?
Sometimes.
Do you have an office and the door is locked and it says,
No.
"Don't disturb, Dad"?
No. I camp out at my dining room table. That's where I like a big space. It's bright. It's warm. It's a nice environment for me. So, and if they happen to be home, there can be all sorts of whatever going on, and it's okay. It's okay. And other times it's quiet. So yes, sometimes I'm up in the wee hours doing work, and but I can do work with all the busyness.
Do you have deadlines, or do you impose deadlines on yourself?
I have a good relationship with my publisher, so there are deadlines, there are things that we're hoping for, but they know the work's going to get done, and hopefully I can get it done when we're all hoping. But if it takes a little bit longer, it's going to be okay. But I do like the deadline.
Do you get as excited when you open the box and find the next book with the cover and everything? Is it the same as the first one? The excitement of, oh my God, look at that, it's mine.
It is. It is. It's a lot of work.
When you walk in and saw it here, you're a little bit surprised. Yes. What a long time between turning it over, suffering the edits. Do you have to suffer through many edits?
I go back and forth with my editor with revisions a couple times.
Do you have a number of pages that you have to stay within in a teen book?
I haven't ever been told what the number has to be.
Children's book, they're limited to so many pages. I
haven't gone over. I try to.
Concise.
I try. Yeah, the stories are pretty involved. So.
Yes, that astounded me. But again, I think that's an intellectual compliment to the teens. They're very busy. They're not just Peter, Paul, Mary, James, and Bartholomew went for a walk and got pizza. You do involve a lot of skullduggery, a lot of detective work, a lot of emotion, consideration, and they're growing up in the meantime.
Yeah, so when I was teaching, I always enjoyed, I loved reading aloud, and in the perfect score, their teacher, Mrs. Woods, is big on reading aloud too, so that's a little bit of me carried over into it. But what I really liked when reading aloud is I liked when my students wanted to stop so we could talk about what was going on in the book, have conversations about the characters or the challenges, the struggles, whatever maybe was going on in the story. And so I valued those conversations very much. I value them even more as a parent now. And so I can assure you, every book I've written is full of things where kids can stop and have these meaningful conversations. That's important to me. So there is a lot going on. In this one, the thought that wouldn't leave me alone that really pushed me, compelled me to write the perfect score was the idea that sometimes we do the wrong thing for the right reasons. And so
that's right okay? There with a white lie.
Yeah, is that okay? Is it okay to do the wrong thing for the right reasons? And is it okay then to break the rules or maybe even break the law if you feel you're doing it for the right reasons? It's not an easy question to answer, which is why that's why it stuck with me. I really wanted to make that a big part of this story. And when you throw friendships into the mix, which is something I saw over and over as a teacher, that question becomes even more complicated, more difficult. So in this one, the perfect score, the kids end up in an after-school program together. They end up there for all different reasons. They're not necessarily excited about the program or each other, but it's through their work in the
club.
Yeah. Yes, I've heard that. But it's through their work in the program, in addition to the many things that are going on both in and out of school. And there's a lot going on with the kids outside of school. They've got some really great backstories, I think. So I mentioned Randy, this gymnast with a lot of pressure. So that's sort of what's going on outside of school. But there's a lot happening in school with these kids too. And so as a result of that, they ultimately end up in a really tricky spot where they face a big decision and they're not sure what to do because they can't, what's right, what's wrong. That's tough. And what do you do if your heart tells you one thing, your brain another? Which one do
get a
you
look
go
at the
with?
consequences no matter which way you go.
Yeah, that's right. And so they make decisions, things change, and question is it going to be for the better? So that's
So you're still
the perfect
teaching.
score.
You
Well, I
may
guess
not be
through
in the classroom, but you're still teaching and giving them
plenty
lessons.
to think about. Plenty
Yeah,
to think about,
thank
talk
you.
about.
That's important. A lot of kids don't have the guidance that you and I had, don't have the conversations that we were given, didn't have the teachers. It's a whole new ball game. And you're going to read to us a particular section that you think is important for children and adults.
Well, I would say it's fun. So I had fun writing it.
Well, that's important too. We'll be back.
Recess was my favorite part of the day. I never got invited to play dates outside of school, so this was my chance to have fun with other kids. The only person I knew who wasn't crazy about recess was NATALIE Kurtzman, but that was probably because she never did anything but walk around by herself. I spent my recess running all over the place. I wasn't allowed to play football because I wasn't good at it like the other boys, but I was good at running, and I was a monkey on the playground equipment. Lucky for us, Lakeview Middle used to be an elementary school, so we had an awesome playground left over from those early days. I loved swinging across the bars and rings and zinging down the zip line, but my favorite was still the twisty slide, even after what had happened. A few years ago, the teachers at my old school made a special rule that if you climbed the stairs to the twisty slide, then you had to go down it. There were no turnarounds allowed. Trust me, it was a dumb rule. There was a day last year when I raced to the top and flew down the slide without knowing there were puddles of water on its surface. Everyone laughed at my wet butt. They had fun pointing and calling me wet butt. They had more fun saying I'd peed my pants, even though they knew that wasn't true. I was glad everyone was happy and smiling, but I wasn't. Try spending the afternoon with wet underwear rubbing you raw, and you'll know why. It was no fun, and it was all because of that dumb rule. After that terrible mistake, I made sure to inspect the slide first, but the only way to inspect it was from the top. A few times I climbed the stairs and discovered puddles and had no choice but to break that rule about no turnarounds. I told everyone to stay off the slide whenever that happened because I didn't want anyone else to end up with a wet butt. That was the worst, or so I thought. What happened today was one for the record books. When I scurried to the top of the twisty slide this afternoon, I discovered something other than puddles of water on its surface. I found bird poop. White splotches were littered all over it, like the bird had aimed and dropped his bombs there on purpose. And it wasn't the white chalky kind that you could brush off, but fresh, wet bird poop. There was no way I was going down that slide, but I also couldn't leave it like that, because the unlucky kid who did go down would end up with white bird dew smeared on his behind. That was way worse than a wet butt. I had to do something, and I had to do it fast. So I did the only thing I could think of. I hid under the top part where it's covered and no one could see me, and I peed down the slide to wash off the poop. I have good aim, so I hit all the white spots. The way I saw it, I was doing everyone a favor. My pee stream did the trick. It worked like magic. When I finished, I hurried back down the steps. "No turnarounds!" the recess aide yelled. We had the same dumb rule at Lakeview Middle. I didn't stop. I jumped from the stairs and joined the game of tag that had started. We always played with 2 taggers and 2 safeties, which were the tire swing and the large oak at the other end of the playground. Our rule was that you had to stay in the wood chip area that surrounded the playground campus. I didn't like the game as much when I wasn't it, because no one ever chased me. But then Tommy yelled out, "Scott's it!" For some reason, I was the only tagger when it was my turn. I chased kids everywhere, but I wasn't able to get anyone. And then I saw Natalie standing nearby. She was all by herself. I knew what that felt like, so I took off after her. I just wanted her to have some fun. I don't know if she ran from me because she was playing or because it was me, but I didn't expect her to run to the top of the twisty slide. Natalie, don't go down, I warned her. You're just trying to trick me, Scott Mason. Besides, the rule says if you go up the steps, you must slide down. She stuck her tongue out at me and then disappeared. Poor Natalie was wearing an all-natural pea fume after that. I felt bad for her. It would have been better if she'd broken the twisty slide rule, but Natalie never broke the rules.
You sure you're not one of those kids? Did they ever ask you, do you model some of them after kids that you knew or had?
My characters are bits and pieces of many different people.
That's a safe answer.
Certainly bits and pieces of former students, but also bits and pieces of me and a lot of imagination, kind of all glued together. That's true in my Mr. Terupt novels, and that's true here. So former students, my children, friends, not friends, teachers, coaches, mom and dad, all of different people. And
that serves you well. I've often been told, write about what moves you, what happened to you, what you've experienced in life.
I definitely write from
seems
experience.
to have served you well.
I have a lot of school memories, and
it's like you never left school.
I never write them down exactly like they happened. I always change it to
embellishment
to make it better. Yes.
Okay. We got about 1 minute left. Anything else you want to tell us?
Well, thanks for having me.
Thank you for being. It's been a delight.
It's been a lot of fun. I just I hope go ahead and if you haven't met Mr. Terupt yet, you want to do that, and I hope you can find time to read the Perfect Score and meet the characters in that series too. So
and one of the things, as I did with Harry Potter, if you read it yourself and then you gift it to a child, be you a grandmother or a mother, you have established a common ground for discussion and conversation, and I find that invaluable. So thank you. I'm going to give it to my granddaughter.
Thanks.
Thank you very much for coming. Please come and talk to us about the next book when it comes out in October.
October, The Perfect Secret in October. So
very good.
My children have given this one a good plug. They tell me it's the best thing I've written. So
how nice.
It's pretty good, I will admit. I'm pretty excited. I'm pretty excited.
Thank you for being with us. That's it for Off the Shelf Books on Tour. Bye.